So you just saw on the main stage, we've launched Chef Workstation Beta, and we're sort of taglining this as easy ad hoc remote tasks in the future of Chef on the desktop. And we'd like to go a little bit deeper into what this is and sort of why we built it, and then give a more extensive demo. So our agenda today, we're going to go through some introductions. We're going to talk about what Workstation is, why we built a new thing. Tyler's going to demo a bunch of the ad hoc node management, kind of give you an overview of all the different ways that you can use this. We're going to talk about how it works behind the scenes for people that care, current limitations, roadmap, how you can go get it today, and then how you can get in touch with us, and then Michael, the product manager, will come up and we can answer any questions. We're going to leave a pretty big time at the end, 15, 20 minutes or so for questions. We think there might be quite a few, so we want to make sure we have time to answer all of those. So I'm John Morrow. I'm the engineering lead for Chef Workstation.
I'm Tyler Ball. I'm one of the senior software development engineers for Chef Workstation.
But it's not just us. This has been quite a team effort over the first part of the year here to get this out. You can see all the team members here, some folks from the community that you probably recognize from Chef DK contributions, and then other engineers around Chef. Most of us are here at the conference, so if you see us in the hall and have a question you don't want to ask here, feel free to stop us. We are very excited about this, and we like talking about it. That's a little bit about us. I'm curious about the folks in the room. How many of you have been using Chef for a while or consider yourself a pretty advanced user? It's a good chunk. Nice. And how many are fairly new, or this is your first exposure? Cool. So we think we have something in this tool. We think we have something in this tool for both of you. For the new users, one of the reasons we started building this, and one of the reasons we started with ad hoc tasks, is we wanted to make the ramp up to Chef much easier. In the past, you had to do a Chef server, lots of components, and it took a while to get to your first nice, useful, powerful thing. We think this will help you when you're on that first journey see value within 5-10 minutes of downloading. If you've used Chef a lot, we think that there's a category of tasks that you want to do in your org that maybe you don't want to go through the full process that we've had in the past. You want to do just a quick thing on that server. You're probably already managing it with Chef Client in the converged model, but maybe you need to go restart a service, or maybe you need to at one of my last companies, we had a problem with a website and had to stop Nginx everywhere for a moment. That's a hard thing to do if you're going through a full pipeline, and this tool would have made that a lot easier for us. So what's Chef Workstation? We see it as the future of Chef on the desktop. We've really taken a user experience focus as we've built the new tools in this. And as we expand out or cover more use cases, that's going to be a just fundamental part of how we go about this. How do we make a consistent, good user experience for you? Instead of maybe in the past you've seen a bucket of tools that are all very useful, but they all feel differently. It's a single package for your workstation. Today it includes the new Chef Run command, which is our ad hoc automation tasks. We've bundled in Chef DK, so if you're using those tools, they're in there. You're able to use them as you have in the past. And we've got a lot more ideas to put in this as we go along. We're trying to take a little bit more of an opinionated approach to the problems. In the past, we've gotten some feedback that Chef lets you do everything, and we're not always good about saying this is maybe the better way to do it if you're not one of the advanced users that's built out your own thing. So we're trying to guide you towards more opinionated or more like what Chef feels is the best way to do it. So why are we building a new thing? Chef as a company started, 10 years ago, nice infrastructure automation company. But over the years, we've expanded into now InSpec for compliance automation and Habitat for application automation. And as we've expanded, Chef DK has been a great tool. It's been a great package that you can install, and we've put InSpec in there to be helpful. We could potentially put other things in there, but we really feel it's time to give you one install that's going to cover the breadth of what Chef does. And as we expand into new areas, give a place where we can add those capabilities in a nice way, and you'll just get them. So I guess with that, I'll hand over to Tyler, and he'll give you a demo.
Thank you, John. OK, so first, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is we're going to go over. So we're going to cover some of the same stuff that Seth looked at. So we're going to look at a single target, single resource converge. We're going to do single target, single recipe. And then we'll do single target recipe converge, but involving some dependent cookbooks. Then we'll talk about multi-target, some Windows to Linux converges, as well as Linux to Windows converges. Throughout this, we'll talk about some of the error handling. And finally, we'll talk about how we're going to integrate with Automate. So OK, so Chef can be used to solve a wide range of problems. And like John talked about, we haven't always given people the best ways to go about solving specific problems. So I like to think of it like a ramp. So on the small end of the ramp, you've got easy problems. And on the large end of the ramp, you've got really hard, complex problems. So my goal is to give people an easy way to adopt Chef for those easy problems. So to that end, we've got Chef Run. I have my MacBook Workstation. I've got 3 Linux nodes and 3 Windows nodes running in EC2, as well as an A2 Automate environment. So the first thing that I like to do when I get a new tool is check out the help. And what I want to ask is, can everybody see this in the back? Should I make it bigger? Bigger. Let's try that. OK. So like we've talked about, if you wanted to check out Chef and get a feel for it in the past, it could involve a lot of headaches, like spinning up a Chef server, getting Chef client installed on a bunch of machines. There was a ton of ways to do that. You have to assign a run list, upload a cookbook, and then finally just log into a node and run Chef client. So instead, I want to introduce a way to run a single resource on a single node where all you have to do is download Chef Workstation, ensure you have SSH connectivity to the node in question, and a user with sudo access. So I'm going to scroll back up. We've got a pretty big help text. But what I want to look at here is this form right here. So this is the first form of Chef Run I'm going to go over. It talks about how to run Chef against some targets using resources. So let's try. OK, so while that's running, I'm going to break down that command. So chef run is the name of our binary that we're using. I'm trying to log in as a user named Ubuntu to a machine named Ubuntu 1. And then I am going to run, we have directory tempfoo. So directory is the chef resource that I want to run. And tempfoo is the name of that folder, that primary resource property that I want to specify to go run that machine. So it ran. We saw that first thing we do is make sure we have connectivity. We check and make sure we have Chef client with a minimum version installed. And then we go converge that resource on the target. So I'll go log into that. And thank you. Make sure that it actually went and did converge that machine correctly. So we've got our tempfoo directory that was created on that machine. Cool. OK, so the second thing I want to show is we're using train underneath the covers. And so what that means is we're leveraging their connection syntax for how we want to log into this machine. So we support both SSH and WinRM connectivity. SSH is the default. When I run this, I can also pass in a key to use. When I want to go connect to that machine. So this is kind of just to show that it's the exact same command. The same thing is going to be happening. It's just that we default some of the things for you. Train also reads out of your local SSH config. So what I did is I went in and specified that for this host, I want to be using this key to log into it. And now I don't have to do that anymore. It's just going to read it from my SSH config. Okay. So the other reason I wanted to run this command again is to show that because we're leveraging Chef and Chef resources, the run is idempotent. It's not going to recreate that directory if it already exists. So I can, it's kind of, yay, it didn't create 2 folders named foo or something. So being able to run a single node, single resource on a remote node is nice, but what if we want to specify the properties for that resource? So Seth showed this up in the demo where we can specify it using this key equals value syntax. So we're going to run that. I'm trying to create a user named Tyler, and I want to specify the user resource property of UID to give it a unique user ID. If we go check out that node, we see that it created the Tyler user, and it has the UID of 1234. You can also use this same syntax to specify actions. So all the properties, all of the actions are available in there. I think the existing resource documentation should show what those are for different resources that you want to apply. And then we try and be smart about how we interpret like true and false values, integers, hexadecimal values, things like that. OK, so we can use resource properties. We'll go check again and see that now that user is no longer on the machine. So the next thing I wanted to show is what happens if I typo this action. So something when we talk about user experience and UI, we've tried to give as useful of errors as we possibly can. So we still go try and run that resource on the remote machine, but when it fails, we're going to give back a lot of information. So the first thing I want to point out here is that we try to come up with as many unique error codes as we could. So we do this so that when people are like encountering issues when they use this tool, hopefully they can Google these unique error codes and get them to the best solution as quick as possible. We've also tried to make the error text itself like as user-friendly as we can. So here, for example, we're trying to give users feedback on, here's what happened that was incorrect. So the action remove is not valid. But here's a list of possible valid resources you could supply, or sorry, proper list of valid actions you can supply for this resource. So we really want to focus on this. We'd love feedback about all the errors and these error texts, and we want to make these as useful for people as possible. OK, the last thing I wanted to show when looking at errors is we try and never show a stack trace on the screen to the user, because it's just not a super helpful thing for anyone who's trying to use the tool. It's only helpful for developers. But we do store those in a stack trace file so that when you want to send in a bug report to us or file GitHub issues, you'll be able to use that and display it. So we still keep that information. We just don't spit it out on standard out and clutter up the screen. OK, so the next topic I want to cover is a little further on the complexity ramp. So what do I want to do when I want to run more than a single resource? And our answer is that we allow you to run a recipe on the target node. OK, so what I have here is a cookbook called Awesome Mix. I'm going to be running the default recipe from it. So I just give the full path of this recipe to the chef run command, and we're going to go take that recipe and run it on the remote node. So we can go real quick look at that recipe. And what we see here is it should have created a group for us and a user. And if we want to go look at that, we'll see that StarLord user was created with the group ID and user ID that we specified. So with recipes, now we have the way to run multiple resources on these nodes. We wanted to give as many ways to specify recipes as we could. If you just give the path to a cookbook, we'll run the default recipe out of that cookbook. So we also try and look up cookbooks on your local cookbook path. So for all the people who are existing Chef users, you probably have a Chef repo, Chef cookbooks configured on your local machine. And if you do, we'll try and go look up those cookbooks, and we'll try and load them from your local system without you having to specify the full path every time. So what we see here is I tried to run my awesome mix cookbook, and it's not located in any of those cookbook repos that I have local to my machine. So what I can do is pass another flag that is somewhere on my notes. And so when you do that, it's going to go run. It's going to go use that cookbook repo. It'll look for cookbooks in there, and it'll run those cookbooks on your target node. Next thing I want to show is you can also, if you're in a directory that contains some cookbooks, you can run, you can specify a cookbook that's just local to that directory. So if you cd in there, we'll be able to look at all those cookbooks. And finally, if you want to specify not the default recipe, but a specific one that you want to run, you can do that with the 2: syntax like that. OK, so that's cool. Now we can run recipes. Something that we wanted to do, and they kind of talked about, we actually make a policy file bundle that we ship to these remote nodes. And so part of that is that it allows us to ship along any library resources and dependent cookbooks. So what I have here, let's go ahead and kick this off. And we're going to look at this. I have a cookbook here called My Nginx. There's a dep recipe that just has include recipe Nginx default. And in my metadata.rb, I've said that this cookbook depends on the Nginx cookbook. So when we go run this cookbook, we'll like make sure that Nginx is installed on that node just by including that Nginx recipe. Oh, sweet. It failed. Let's see if I can figure out why. I know exactly why that failed. Yeah. You didn't see a bug. This is definitely not what happened. OK, I'm actually encouraged this taking a long time to run, because hopefully that means that it's actually installing Nginx. OK, so we were able to successfully converge the target, and we can validate that that worked, because the Nginx cookbook gives us this default Nginx page. So in 2 iterations of the same command, we're able to get Nginx installed on this host and running. OK, so the next thing that I want to do is look at how we support multiple nodes. So you can do single resource. You can do multiple resources as recipes. What if you want to specify multiple nodes that you want to run against? And so, as I kind of showed on stage, we support syntax for specifying multiple nodes. And one of the ways you can do that is comma separated. So when you specify comma-separated hosts, we'll go and we'll try and, in parallel, run the recipe or the resource you specify on both of those hosts. We also support a range syntax, and that looks like this. So this says I want to go run the Awesome Mix Cookbook on my Ubuntu nodes using a range 1 through 3. We'll pull those 3 ranges out, put the individual ranges in as characters, make that host name string. We'll go connect and merge all of those. We have some simple defaults in place for what kind of ranges we support. So at this point, we only allow you to run 24 hosts in a single instance. We'd love feedback on that and see what kind of ranges people want to specify. So the last thing I want to show is in the case of an error, it's not going to affect any of the other hosts that we're trying to connect to, any of the other chef runs we're trying to do. And in addition, we're going to log out all the errors that have occurred when you try and perform these multiple host management. And we're going to write them out to a file again so that we're not going to clutter up the screen.
Can you use a file that lists the hosts that you want to affect?
If you wanted to read it up and using bash syntax, parse it into a comma-separated list, yes. But right now, we don't have any way of just pointing at a file and saying, here's a host on every line, do this for every host, or CSV or anything like that. That's something when we talk about the inventory management, and things that we want to do, that is definitely something that we want to do. So John will talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. OK, next thing, Windows support. So we have Windows support, and it requires a different kind of connection string. So we have tried our best to make Windows a first-class citizen in all this. We've tested it as much as we can. We definitely know there are people who are more powerful Windows users than we are, and so we want to hear feedback about how this works for you and make sure that, that it's successful. So.
What about running it from a Windows platform?
Going to show you that in just a second. Let me actually, I think my session got disconnected. So I'm running bundler in front of this, so I'm doing some local stuff. I'm wondering if I forgot to specify my password in that environment variable. No, it's there. Please don't hack my Windows machines.
I would never remember that.
Single quotes instead of double quotes. Well, we're going to skip straight to the multi-target Windows hosts because the single target was not complex enough. OK, so we do the same thing for Windows that we do for Linux. You can specify resources. You can specify recipes. We support multiple hosts. We're trying to give the exact same support. I think the last thing that I want to show here is that same kind of Nginx idea. And we'll give this a second to run. But what this is going to do, and we can look at this recipe to see, is this is going to set up these hosts as Iis Web Servers. So this is kind of trying to show parity between Nginx and Iis. We're going to set them up, and we're going to see kind of a default Iis page. While that runs, because it takes a second, I'm going to go over here. I have a Windows workstation running here, and I have installed chef run onto it. And so copied over my user key, and we're going to try and run chef run against one of those Ubuntu hosts that I was managing from my Linux workstation earlier. Yes. So we know there's some issue with some of the text rendering, but like I said, this is where we want people who are Windows users. Please use this, give us feedback. We want to hear it. But we're trying to make it a supported workstation as well. We know a ton of people have Windows workstations. We absolutely will have this working for Windows. We want to. This is something that's very important to us. So, go ahead.
Can you suppress SSH key requirements?
Probably. Let's talk afterwards. So if we go look at one of those Windows hosts, we can see that it sets up the default Iis web page. OK, So now I'm going to talk about some of our Automate integration. So what I did is I configured all of these hosts to send data to my private Automate instance that I have set up as I'm going and performing chef runs. So reporting is obviously a very important part of running chef runs. So I have chef Automate running here. And what I'm going to do is refresh this page about client runs. And we should see all 6 of our hosts are reporting back successful chef runs. So if we look here, we see that we have all of our 3 Windows hosts and our 3 Ubuntu hosts. The run history is going to show all of these ad hoc chef client runs that performed against these nodes. We also support filtering chef client runs based on ones that have come from local mode as opposed to a specific chef server. And we support filtering instead of different chef orgs. You can say, I want to see all of the chef runs that have come from chef workstations instead of a specific chef org. OK.
So if you look at the run history, can you see what was actually done in the run?
That's a good question. Oops. Thank you. I totally know how to use our own products. OK. Yes, it works differently than that. Like, I'd love to talk about that if that's a question. Like, at question time, let's talk about that more in depth. Yes is the answer. So this is a list of all the commands that I ran for the slideshow afterwards. We'll talk some more about how it works. So like I said, first we install Chef Client on these remote nodes. We don't do exactly the Chef bootstrapping process, but we make sure the Chef Client is installed on there. Then we create a policy file bundle that includes either your resource or your recipes, as well as any dependent recipes. Oh, I also meant to mention, by default, we download the Chef Client installer to your workstation and then ship it to all of the target nodes. So we wanted to support environments that have like lockdown systems first. So as long as your workstation has connectivity, we'll be able to ship the client installer to it. Then we create a policy file bundle. We run Chef Client in local mode using that policy file bundle. And if none of these terms make sense to you, don't worry. They're implementation details. We really don't want you to have to know about it.
Do we get to choose what agents we want to install?
What's what?
Do we get to choose that what version of agent goes as part of Workstation?
Right now, we pin it to a specific one, but those are definitely options we're going to support in the future, like different versions, like specifying which installer and architecture and OS, where you want it to come from, things like that.
If you don't utilize the policy files in our environment, should we implement it, or is it mandatory to use policy files?
It doesn't mean you have to use policy files in your environment, no. So some limitations, obviously, so this is all about ad hoc local execution, so no chef server artifacts, which means no search, data bags, roles, or environments, except if they're built into your cookbook. It requires chef greater than 14.1.1 on the target nodes. So right now, if you have chef installed and it's a lower version than that, we fail out. We want to build a better experience around upgrading chef client versions on nodes, and we just didn't have enough time before ChefConf to do that, although that's something we want to support in the future. WinRM has exhibited some bugs, and if you have an Automate server with self-signed certs, there's another bug around the data collector, those reports running. So there's all sorts of bugs I'm sure we're going to find, and we will be fixing.
So those, the limit of 24 nodes is not a limitation?
No, that's just arbitrarily. We put it in before ChefConf as, like, we didn't want people to spin up 1,000, so we just put in some limit, and then we will be going back and figuring out what is the appropriate limit, like worker pools, et cetera. OK, that is all my demo. I'm going to hand it back to John to talk more about roadmap.
Thank you, Tyler. So we'll look a little, yeah, give Tyler a round of applause. That was awesome. So looking a little bit forward, some of the things we want to think about as Chef Workstation becomes the package for your workstation, it spans multiple sort of footprints of Chef product space. We think there's some really cool things we do if we go with the tray app. So that's something we're going to look at fairly shortly after ChefConf. We want to be able to provide auto update, so you don't have to worry about it. If we push a new bug fix to Workstation, it'll pull the components and get them updated for you. We think that as this is targeted also at brand new users, we want to make the integration with Automate a lot easier. So instead of having to go to Automate, download a key, know the URL, know where the config is, go edit it. We've all done that with Chef stuff. We think we can give a nice experience around that. Also, additional config. I want a new user whose only job is to consume some Chef content that somebody else in the org has written, to be able to do this without seeing a cookbook, without seeing config. Just get in it, run the command, point it at what you want to do, success. As we look a little further down, more Automate 2 integration. We showed just the basic stuff using the existing data collector because we could do it and it was easy. This category of task, we think, probably has some different visualizations on the Converge page, especially on nodes where Chef Client is running and you're doing ad hoc stuff. We think that in Automate 2, there's an event feed that shows near real-time actions that are going on in your infrastructure. You probably want to know when your employees or your users are out there doing things on the nodes. RBAC support. Automate 2 has really robust roles and access controls in it. We think there's something we can do there to maybe manage keys or make it much easier to configure who can do what within your infrastructure if you have an Automate instance. I don't have it on here, but we talk a little bit about on the team, and this is much further down, being able to trigger these jobs from Automate in a similar way to where you can trigger compliance scans from Automate. Remote cookbooks. You saw a little bit of it in Tyler's demo where we went and got the Nginx cookbook and pulled it in. That one happens to work. Because of the limitations on Chef server artifacts, we think we can make that experience a lot better and basically make it to where you only bring in stuff that's known to work. Right now, it's a little bit of a foot gun. If you know what you're doing, you can pull stuff in. It's good. If the cookbook up there is very advanced, it might fail. We want to make that not a sad experience. Inventory support you had asked about. There's a lot of things we think about here, and in the first prototype of this that we actually started a little bit towards the end of last year, we had a basic inventory support. It was a file. You could say this group of nodes, my web servers, are these hosts, and it worked relatively nicely. We saw limitations there, and we thought, we want to do this right. We want to step back and rethink that, and that's why it's not in the product today. Stuff that I think about that could be super interesting here beyond just, here's my set of web servers, here's my database servers. I did a scan in Automate, and these 10 nodes failed something. Can we surface that as something you can target with this tool to do a remediation? I just think there's lots of cool things we can do there, especially coupled with Automate and sort of the groupings of nodes you do there. We're actively looking for customer development partners. So those interactions are going to drive additional use cases, and that's going to help influence this roadmap. This is our best guess right now, but we want to respond to what you guys need. And that's sort of the last thing. Like, we want all of you to be excited about this. We want you to feel part of it, that it's your tool. And part of that is that you can give us feedback, and we'll respond to it.
Will it be able to do ad hoc inspection?
So because ChefDK is shipped in there, InSpec is in there as well, and you can use it as it exists today. I think there's probably some better UX sort of fairy dust we can put on there to make the interaction between Chef Run and InSpec a really cool experience. So that's where, when we talk about UX, we're not going to address that until we can do the product and UX cycle to make that awesome. So as you see new functionality come in, what you will likely see is pieces of the DK pulled in to be first-class workstation experiences instead of being brought in strictly from the DK. And as we do that, that experience is going to get all the UX sugar that we've done on Chef Run. Yeah, it is in there today with InSpec. If you look at the InSpec docs, you can do that. So if you want to get this, it's live at chef.sh. This is a new microsite that we launched today. It's really about the Chef open source products and to help you get started really quickly with our tools. We want to get feedback on this also. One of the things the team looked at really deeply as we went through this process is your journey doesn't start when you downloaded the thing. Your journey starts when you ask a question about how do I do a thing with Chef? And this site is part of that journey. So we want to make sure it meets your needs to get going. Getting in touch with the team. We've set up a new email address that's beta@chef.io. That comes to all the engineers. We check that pretty frequently. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if there's a feature you're like, I got to have it, that's a place you can put it. Here at ChefConf, a bunch of us will be at the booth from 5 to 7 tonight. Come by, talk to us. We're, like I said earlier, we're super excited about this. We want to talk about it. We've set up a new channel on the Chef community Slack, Chef Workstation. We'll all be monitoring that, so you can drop in there and give us questions, comments, anything you want to do. And then also find us around the conference. So just to get it out of the bag, one more thing, this is going to be open source. It's super new. We're not sure what the contribution model is going to be yet. Right now, it's 2 people on the team review it and say it's good. But the code is live today there. You can go take a look at it. You can file issues if you want to. If there's something on there that you're like, man, I'm going to fix this thing, feel free to put a PR in and we'll take a look at it. With that, I'm going to invite Michael up and we'll get started with questions.
All right, thank you, John and Tyler. Awesome demos.